Yeah, warm welcome again. It's Andy, it's Tim, it's Two Peas in a Sunday podcast. Hiya, Tim.
Hey, buddy.
I thought I'd come to
Great
the
to
beach
be with
and
you.
get some fresh air.
Yeah. So it's been a good week for you?
Yeah, not too bad, ups and downs with strange people, but apart from that, all good, yeah.
Okay. Well, a British scientist plotted to cover up the COVID lab leak origin of the COVID-19 virus. Peter Daszak is accused of trying to shut down the theory that coronavirus leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. This is a bioweapon laboratory run by the Chinese military. And this Daszak was the head of Eco Health Alliance, which was a sub-grant agency which funneled the money from the NIAID, led by Fauci, to hide the source of the grant. Money for doing gain of function research to weaponize the coronavirus. And these people are genocidal maniacs. They know exactly what they're doing. They're liars. They're criminals. They're the worst that the organized crime, big pharma, mafia could ever concoct. These are villains of the highest order. And the reason that Fauci's got away with it to this point is because of his status as the head of NIH and NIAI. It's almost like, typical murder mystery where the person you last suspect is the one that's actually most culpable. And so people were blinded by status, as they always are. They worship the white coats. They worship this doctor title. They worship the fact that he's the head of this organization and he's a multimillionaire, a very respectable man. Yeah, right. He's a crook, God damn it. And it's clear. And he pleads the fifth when he has no call to do so. He's appearing before the Senate, not a usual court of law. This is addressing crimes against humanity. The questions are very, very serious. And he's answerable to this body. He can't plead the fifth. This is bullshit. Okay, Andy, so a British zoologist is what Daszak is, and involved in risky bat coronavirus experiments in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and is accused of plotting with a senior U.S. health official to shut down the theory that COVID-19 leaked from a lab. So they went with the wet market story because they're wet and they're just soaking wet in the shit they swim in. Okay, so Peter Daszak, the former president of Eco Health Alliance, sent bottles of wine to David Morans, thanking him for his behind the scenes shenanigans in inverted quotations. In other words, thanks for covering for me, you fucking crook, and promising further gifts such as dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants. Yeah, bribe your buddy. Okay, so Morans, who's 78, a former employee at the NIH, and National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and advisor to Fauci, this week pleaded guilty to conspiring to evade public record laws and conceal government documents related to grant research funding and the COVID-19 pandemic. You'll notice that I didn't call him Dr. Daszak, Dr. Peter Daszak. No. When you're a crook, you don't get the title. Sorry, you're a crook. You should be in jail and stripped of all of your titles, all of your awards, whatever the hell you have gained in your career, because you're nothing but a crook. And not just a crook, you're responsible for crimes against humanity and you're a traitor against your own people. You're a scumbag. Okay, he is facing 5 years in jail. Is that all? For the crimes this piece of shit has committed, he should be in jail for life. And of course, no charges have been brought against Dazik. Only Morin, as it stands. He's been indicted based on his confession and is facing 5 years. It should be a life term. And as for Dazik, well, of course, he'll probably get away scot-free because they got a fall guy. And the fall guy who thought he was his friend. Yeah, a bribed friend. Okay. Okay, Richard Abright, a molecular biologist at Rutgers University, who has called for a lab leak scenario to be fully investigated, said, Morin's guilty pleas is an important first step in holding accountable the U.S. officials who funded the reckless research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Okay, Andy, any comment?
Yeah, well, apparently, Friday, just a couple of days back, Fauci declines to sit for an interview with Senator Ron Johnson. Former White House COVID-19 Caesar Anthony Fauci told Ron Johnson he will not appear for this interview.
Slap him
With
with
this,
the contempt charge and throw his ass in jail like tomorrow. This is just bullshit.
and then also Fauci's lawyers are begging for money to defend Fauci, which you can't kill millions of people around the world and get off scot-free. Well, and that other guy, by the way, what happened to him?
Does it? Nothing. Shit all. They haven't
No, not
even.
him.
Ooh.
The foundation and him and his wife. He's got to be a part of this
Oh, you
COVID
mean
cover-up.
Gates? Gates, you mean?
Gates, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, when um, Rand, Rand Paul was questioning Fauci, asked him what role Gates played in this COVID research business over in Wuhan. And of course, he pleaded the fifth because he could not be put in a position where he'd be ratting on his fellow co-conspirator, co-genocidal Dr. Evil.
Yeah, just
So, in
let
answer
people.
to your question, I think
Oh,
Gates is
sorry.
implicated, but the witness that could attest to his involvement pleaded the fifth, and he should not be allowed to plead the fifth. They should immediately charge him with contempt of process. Anyway,
Yeah, just like people know, the Fifth Amendment in the US is a protection for people who self-incriminate themselves, stops the double jeopardy rule, which being tried twice for the same crime, and guarantees a grand jury for major crimes. That's what the Fifth Amendment is, if nobody knew.
thank you, Andy, for explaining it. I took it for granted everyone was familiar with this, but maybe not. Okay. In a signed plea agreement, Morin's admitted contacting Dazik, named throughout as a co-conspirator one, using his private Gmail messages could not be found through Freedom of Information Act requests. Morin's also promised to help Dazik win back grant funding for his bad coronavirus experiments in China, which had been suspended as of April 2020 over fears that the research may have caused the pandemic. Oh God, these guys are shameless, eh?
Definitely.
COVID-19 emerged just 8 miles from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Well, wouldn't you think? Where Dazik and EcoHealth Alliance had been working with scientists to collect and genetically tweak, to genetically modify bat coronaviruses in order to weaponize them for the purpose of genocide. Hello! This isn't just biological research to protect the population against biological weaponization of viruses. This is an actual attempt to genocide the population. Of which countries? Well, the entire Western Hemisphere to genocide all white Christians. That's for a start, that's clear. But they're going to round two by bringing in Muslims to finish the job. You know, it's crazy, Andy.
And a lot of headlines in the day of COVID-19 when it first hit. There was a load of countries, Brazil was one of them, especially around the Amazon tribes, saying that, this is genocide. I mean, obviously, I don't know where they got that from at the time, but we are on the eve of genocide. Brazil urged to save Amazon tribes. And so on, a lot of countries were saying the same thing. Amazing.
So in June 2020, emails show that Morans agreed to write a scientific commentary outlining the importance of Dazik's work while keeping the zoologist's name out of the article, giving the impression it was wholly independent. He told Dazik via email, let's win this anti-science battle, get you refunded, then settle the scores and kick some ass. Oh yeah, anti-science. Anti-genocide science, yeah. We're trying to stop you, Dr. Evil. A couple of weeks later, court documents show Dazik sent 2 bottles of the prisoner red Napa Valley wine to Morans with the quaint little message. This is the first of what I hope will be a continued series of expressions of gratitude for your support, advice, and behind the scenes shenanigans. Yeah, you're lying through your teeth. And in my battle against your boss's boss, his boss, and the ultimate boss on the hill, obviously referring to President Trump. Okay, so the next month, Morans published an article titled The Origin of COVID-19 and Why It Matters, and Why I'm Lying Through My Teeth to Protect My Crooked Friend, in which he argued that COVID-19 was a natural spillover from animals and called for work such as Dazik's to be funded to prevent another pandemic. You believe these liars? To call for funding so that they could kill a few billion more white people in the Western Hemisphere. We're already a minority on this planet, but they keep talking about minority rights. How about our rights as a minority on the goddamn planet? They're trying to genocide all of us. Get it? White Christians are on the chopping block with these genocidal maniacs. Luciferian, satanic, you got it. That's what they are. They're Team Antichrist, and they're trying to genocide all Christians. Why? Because Jesus is the light of the world, and they do not want any hope. They want nothing but hopelessness, despair. They all want us hooked on drugs because we're in despair. They want a zombie apocalypse, and they want to end the world. They're crazy, lunatic, devil worshippers.
Yeah, can we remind people that we spoke last week about the masks and the tests themselves? They also was dangerous. Looking in one of the Facebook groups, there's a big poster It
Uh-huh.
says the NHS whistleblower, um, he states, or she states, we were ordered to euthanize patients to falsely increase COVID death counts while hospitals remained empty. And then there's another article that interested me at the moment, and I think you agree with this. Why did so many Americans die from COVID relative to the numbers who succumbed in other rich countries? Understanding the answer would seem relevant to guarding against the next inevitable pandemic. And at the bottom, big poster saying the real COVID-19 scandal from the COVID days is still unfolding in America. So what they're saying is it's not the peak of it has not happened yet, even though we're 6 years down the line nearly.
Right, so there's going to be a whole host of more deaths caused by the goddamn vaccine, bioweapon, a fake vaccine, I should say.
Yeah, COVID infection. These are all from a couple of days ago. Another post. It's a group about COVID-19 news, and one poster says COVID infections are rising again in the US to pandemic levels again.
Do you believe that?
I don't know. Anything's possible, I guess.
I think it's just because we've entered flu season and they're just saying that the flu is COVID, like lying again.
As a question for you, why does MAGA America hate Fauci so much? I suppose that's easy.
Why does what?
Why does MAGA America hate Fauci? Never heard of the phrase MAGA before, so I wouldn't know.
Make America Great Again, that whole movement um, hates Fauci. Why? Because he was part of the radical left conspiracy to destroy white America and so-called right-wing Republican America.
And 19 hours ago in Health and Happiness, it's another Facebook group. COVID-19 wakes up dormant viruses in the body, and cancer, a large study confirms. Yeah, it's very interesting. You could cry yourself to sleep if you read any more of that, but it's true.
Well, probably there's adjuvants in the vaccine that instead of stimulating an immune response, actually cause dormant viruses to wake up and cancer cells to activate.
I just talked to a lady, and she mentioned COVID. She said, my mum died with cancer after COVID, and then she went on and on about 6 or 7 more people, and that's just in the Glasgow area of Scotland alone.
Uh, so a press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Maryland said that Morans and his co-conspirators had pledged to help counter the narrative that COVID-19 leaked from a lab. Yeah, they didn't want to get caught. So co-conspirator one was the president and chief executive officer of Company Number One. Company Number One was a non-profit organization headquartered in New York with a stated mission of protecting people, animals, and the environment from emerging infectious diseases. Yeah, I mean, you do the bioweapon research ostensibly to protect the public against a bioweapon being deployed against a target population, but you can easily reverse the research to actually use the weaponized virus that you've created ostensibly to defend against, to deploy to attack the target population which was always the intention, but at least you need the cover of good intentions. These people don't have any good intentions because they don't have any good, no benevolence whatsoever. Okay, so
I've just
yeah,
quickly on that one
yes.
with Fauci, and this is from Congress.gov, so that's American Congress, a news story on the 1st of December 21. The NIH, the National Institute of Health, has denied, and now this one today is proven this was a lie, has denied funding studies that would make a coronavirus in a lab. So they denied the funding at that point in 21, and now they've, 5 years later, they've got to admit it, they was funded. So that's just how much they lied here.
Yeah, and that's why they needed Daszak's sub-grant agency, the EcoHealth Alliance sub-grant agency, to send the funding to the Wuhan Institute of Virology so that they could hide the source of funding. They're crooks, that's all there is to it. Genocidal, evil, Dr. Evil crooks. Through company number one, co-conspirator one researched the origins, transmissibility, virility, and impacts of potentially emergent infectious diseases, including those associated with coronaviruses originating from animals like bats. In an award dated May 27, 2014, NIH and NIAID awarded grant number, never mind the grant number, it's too convoluted. Understanding the risk of bat coronavirus emergence was what the funding was for, which was the bat coronavirus grant. To company number one, co-conspirator one was the project director, project investigator for the bat coronavirus grant. The Wuhan Institute of Virology received a subaward from company number one on the bat coronavirus grant. Last year, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services debarred Daszak, the U.S.-based EcoHealth Alliance, blocking both from receiving federal funds for 5 years. Well, thank God. Maybe that's forestalled the next pandemic because they've stopped them in their tracks. It followed an 8-month investigation which concluded that taxpayer money had been used to facilitate dangerous gain-of-function research in China to make viruses more lethal. So yeah, can you imagine, folks? They're using your tax dollars to kill you. Isn't that beautiful?
And if you're lucky, you'll get a bonus, you'll get a virus.
Daszak visited the Wuhan Institute of Virology in 2021 as part of a team dispatched by the World Health Organization to investigate the source of the coronavirus pandemic. And I want to say that World Health Organization is a double entendre because the health they're talking about is not protecting you from deadly pathogens and diseases. The World Health Organization is based on a concept of healthy society, which means genocide everyone you don't want, the unclean masses, genocide them, get rid of them, depopulate this work. We need a hygienic society. We need a clean society. Get rid of the useless eaters. Let's have a eugenics-based medicine that will get rid of all the trash that we don't want. This is how the elitists think. And so what did they do? They appointed a genocidal warlord from Ethiopia to head the World Health Organization, Tedros. He's a crook, he's a criminal, that's all he is, a genocidal monster from Ethiopia, here to genocide you. Hello? Okay. I I have nothing whatever good to say about the World Health Organization. I met an official from Ottawa years ago. She was a control freak fascist and didn't even know it. Andy, are we done?
No, we're still here. You could say it's the weather.
Okay, let's move on to another story, shall we?
Yeah, carry on.
Okay.
Well, apart from saying that, um, apparently the conspiracy theorists was finding a lot of criminals in COVID-19, but then um, they became, the criminals became yeah. You said something like that last week, and I've lost my track because, yeah, we went somewhere different a minute ago.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, the conspiracy theorists found the criminals, and the criminals were the conspiracy. That's it.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the nuclear, the Hiroshima Nagasaki thing. I've got a couple of points from Nick on that score.
Okay, but before you do, it's relevant. I can bring this in now. Russia's threatened UK with nuclear war, or at least Third World War, because we've been given drones to Ukraine, and today or yesterday they've pulled out the ambassador to Russia from London. And today there was a power plant went down, loss of energy for several hours, but they're not blaming Russia for that. They're blaming Iran. So yeah, interesting times.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always good to hear what Nick says.
Okay, wait a sec. I got this article here from. Okay, perfect. Let's finish up with this story, okay?
Yeah, carry on.
All right. So, the supernatural, non nuclear great chastisement of mankind. In general, Catholic and Orthodox prophecy are very closely aligned and both speak of an impending chastisement or purification of mankind. Padre Pio seemed to indicate the timing as being roughly before 2035 when he foretold this in 1952 to 55 to some altar boys who would live to see it. And since Italian males typically live to 80 years or better. All right. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Russian-American aviator Alexander de Seversky was an early expert eyewitness on the scene at Hiroshima and Nagasaki back in September 1945, and he stated, to my utter astonishment, Hiroshima from the air looked exactly like all the other burned out cities I had observed. For 2 days I examined Hiroshima. I searched for traces of phenomena that could reasonably be tagged unusual, but I could not find anything. Okay, U.S. plutonium deficiency was a problem up until 1948, but also a U.S. uranium insufficiency persisted all the way through 1945. On the 31st of May, 1945, U.S. physicist Arthur Compton told the Manhattan Project's secret interim committee that it would take at least 2 more years to develop plutonium purification, and that it would take a further year up until 1948 to obtain a sufficient quantity of plutonium. The minutes of the meeting also state that reactor-grade uranium was also in short supply as of May 1945, meaning insufficient for any atomic bombs. We can conclude from the documents and experimental studies that it was impossible to build A-bombs in the summer of 1945. The U.S. regime claims that the Hiroshima A-bomb contained 50 kilograms of uranium-235, of which 1 kilogram fissioned, meaning that a massive 49 kilogram of unfissioned uranium-235 was expected on the ground but was not found. As a fallout marker for Hiroshima, a huge amount, 35 grams of cesium-137, was expected to, but not found. The U.S. regime claims that the Nagasaki A-bomb contained 6 kilograms of plutonium-235, of which only 1 kilogram fissioned, meaning that 5 kilograms of unfissioned plutonium-239 was expected on the ground at Nagasaki, but was not found. As a fallout marker for Nagasaki, a huge amount, 35 grams of cesium-137, was also expected to be found, but none was found. Unfortunately, modern Kabbalistic science has long been proven to contain a lot of hoaxes. Modern Kabbalistic science claims that plutonium-239 exists enduringly as a long-lived substance, although the real evidence suggests plutonium-239 is a byproduct of nuclear reactions that in fact only exist for a very limited time, perhaps a maximum of 3 days. Modern Kabbalistic science claims that nuclear fission can be extremely explosive, despite the fact that only an insignificant amount of gas, xenon, krypton, is produced by a fission reaction, and despite the fact that every destructive explosion or blast in the universe requires the rich presence of gas. An astonishing yet inconvenient fact is the theoretical nuclear bombs were actually intended originally in the 1940s. Were actually invented originally in the 1914 novel The World Set Free, written by Rothschild and MI6 frontman H.G. Wells. Think about this. H.G. Wells, the famous science fiction writer, was in fact the head of British intelligence. Modern Kabbalistic science claims that uranium and plutonium can explode, despite the fact that they are metals that can in fact only melt at high temperatures, as was manifested at 3 Mile Island in 1979 and in Fukushima, Japan in 2011, and their heat conductivity then drops drastically since melted metals are liquid. Okay. Recently, Scottish scientists Dr. Stephen Young and Thomas Judge also stated in many compelling interviews that nuclear explosions are impossible, basically because of the almost complete absence of sufficient amounts of gas. And although nuclear power is real, Young and Judge assert that nuclear bombs are simply impossible for all the scientific reasons already stated. Okay, so Andy, Our friend Nick contests this, but he did say this. Nick Velasquez, a former York University professor who has worked for the National Research Institute in Ottawa and does have some expertise on nuclear testing and so forth. He says after the Manhattan Project scientist Vannevar Bush briefed Harry Truman and his advisors, one of them based on the pre-20th century science, Fleet Admiral William Leahy said, "This is the biggest fool thing we have ever done. The atomic bomb will never go off, and I speak as an expert in explosives." He and many others, including Einstein, who later shared his opinion, made the same claim. So, The Day We Bombed Utah, a book by John G. Fuller, who also authored the UFO classic, The Interrupted Journey, documents how the U.S. above-ground nuclear explosions and fallout behaved just like the two single atomic bombs dropped on Japan. Okay, Nick also sent me a text on my phone. Andy, he says this: unlike Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which were destroyed by one nuclear bomb dropped by a single bomber, Tokyo was also totally destroyed during countless chemical bombs dropped from 1,000 bombers. I guess he meant thousands of bombers, which, by the way, destroyed one of their independent nuclear bomb facilities. This forced the Japanese Navy to rush to test their own nuclear bomb built at their secret facility on a Korean island. Korean island.